Hello and welcome to Dream It, Dare It, Do It, Live the Life You Want. I'm Jasmine, your host, and I'm excited to have with me. I don't know if you guys have seen on social media, I've started putting out these the 14 all-time most favorite episodes, and one of them is Dicken Bettinger, and he came back. So here he is. Hi, Dicken.
Hi, Jasmine. Good to be with you again.
Thank you. Thank you
And
for
your
coming.
dog.
Yeah, my
What-
bote is also here.
uh,
So, um, everyone who's listening, Dicken is presently running a program that's called Compassion, a Spiritual Response to Anxiety and Fear. And in his description, he was discussing, he had a bunch of stuff, but there was one phrase that just hit me. And the phrase was, I'm going to read it again. Let me find it again. Do you get thrown when others are unkind to you? And I was like, yeah. Yes, I do. I don't want to, but I do. And and if you've ever heard Dickens speak before, you know how you can almost feel his heart when he speaks. He's got a lot of compassion, and I would love to have a conversation with him so that he can tell us a little bit more about it. And I'm going to tell everybody that right now I'm going through stuff with my father. My father is 82 and he just broke his ankle. And he would really, really like it if I was with him all the time. Um, but I can't because I gotta work. And then when I can, I don't necessarily feel like going, and then I feel bad because I don't feel like going because he's not always nice. And so I'm gonna be listening from that space thinking,
Mm. Well, I think it's a good space to listen from. I don't know anybody who hasn't experienced when someone has been unkind to them that they haven't experienced having some kind of emotional reaction to it.
"Hmm,
Either we get defensive, or we get our feelings hurt, or we get upset, or we're in disbelief, or any number of reactions we might have. Not uncommon. That's not headline news that human beings have low moods, and when they have low moods, they say unkind things. Or when someone else has a low mood and says unkind things, that we drop into a lower state and have our own reaction. I think everybody's experienced that, right? I mean, it's so there's nothing wrong with that happening. It's we're doing the best we can given what we understand about how this works. And I know, I mean, even having been a psychologist for many, many years, I would still have strong reactions to people's unkindness. And then, as you know, Jasmine, I met someone who had had an enlightenment experience, and he had a completely different way of talking about psychology. And the more I began to listen to him and reflect on what he said, the more I found that either I started to not have reactions when I normally would have, or I had a reaction and it didn't bother me in the least and it passed very quickly. That was a new experience for me because usually when I had a reaction, innocently, what I would do is start thinking about it and keep thinking about it and keep thinking about it. And I would have conversations in my head and I would have these trying to figure out what I could have said or what I should have said or what the expert said. And so innocently, I'd have a reaction and then I would do a lot of thinking. Now, I've learned a lot from little kids. And right now, I have a 5-year-old granddaughter.
okay.
And I watch her be in such a good mood and so happy and playing and playing and playing. But every once in a while, like we all experience, her brother, who's older, is in a low mood and he does something or says something mean to her. And sometimes she blows it off and just keeps playing. But sometimes, oh my gosh, she gets so caught up in thinking about it that she can have a huge meltdown. But now here's what's interesting. She's more interested in playing than she is thinking about herself and her life. And in order to play, kids learn very quickly, you have to be present. And we can't be present and be thinking about something at the same time. Because if you're thinking, you're not present.
Yeah.
So I watch little kids have emotional reactions that would put us to shame. It's like atomic meltdowns. I mean, like yelling and crying and sobbing, and it's the end of the earth. And then 2 minutes later, they're playing again, happy as can be. What's the difference? But most adults that I know, Jasmine, when they have a strong emotion, two things happen that makes it likely that you'll keep having strong emotions. One is when they have the emotion, it's like a signal to leave the present moment, which is the only place we can be and be resilient, get over things easily. Little kids are present centered still. So they come back to the present. And when you're present, you can't hold on to thoughts that upset you, and they flow, they pass, they leave our heads. We stop creating them. So that's one problem is innocently, most adults, when they drop into a lower mood, do more thinking. For example, people who are depressed, 85% of the time, they're thinking depressing thoughts. And those thoughts keep creating that feeling over and over again because it's now scientific. Whatever we think, we're going to feel. So you can have two people that are insulted and you can't predict who's going to respond how because it depends completely on how they think about it. One person can be thinking that's the most abusive thing in the world, and the other person can be thinking, oh, that person is really caught up in their thinking right now and suffering. Doesn't have anything to do with me. So two things can happen. One, we can feed it with more thinking. And one, if we don't know that every feeling we have is created by our own thinking, immediately when we feel that way, we'll think the other person did it to us. So now we're a victim of the other person. They just made me feel what I'm feeling. Well, last I checked, no human being has the power to create feelings in people. Could you imagine if people did? I could
No.
just point at you and say sad, and you'd have to feel sad. I'd point at you and say angry, and keep feeling angry until I tell you not to be. And people would literally control us. And yet, when we get upset, most often when I ask people who are upset, why are you upset? They'll innocently blame somebody else or some situation. I'm upset because of the traffic. I'm upset because of the weather. I'm upset because of what this person said to me. I'm stressing out because of how much work I have to do. And it's understandable that we think that way because we were taught by other people that that's true. As we grow up, parents say to us, "You've hurt my feelings. You're making me so upset." You and we it seems like that might be true, but it's not scientific. Even in the worst situations in the world, you'd think everybody in that situation, some crisis like a hurricane destroying a neighbor, and they interview people, you'd think everyone would be devastated. Not true. Not true. Some people are calm. Some people are incredibly compassionate in terms of doing nothing but doing what they can to help other people in the neighborhood. Some people are terrified. None of those responses is wrong or bad because they're each created by wherever the person's thinking went. So if you think sad, you feel sad. If you think calm, you feel calm. If you think anxious, you feel anxious.
So tell me about compassion then. Like,
Well, I didn't used to have much compassion because I thought people pissed me off.
yeah,
Genuinely.
yeah, I believe you.
Family, friends, enemies, didn't matter.
Yeah.
If they said something and I got upset, I thought they did it. And then I meet this man and he became my teacher. He had had this enlightenment experience and he had realized that we're all connected to this spiritual dimension of life, formless energy. We're surrounded by a sea of energy, and that sea of energy is not passive. It has the power to create everything that exists. Literally, everything you see didn't exist at one point. It came out of nothing. This is very scientific. This is not woo-woo. This is like, well, the quantum physicists say all of matter is temporary condensations of energy in this field, the quantum field, this field of energy. Thoughts are a temporary condensation of electrical chemical activity in our brain, but there's something generating that energy and creating that energy. So, compassion, what's compassion? It can be compassion you have toward yourself. I can't tell you how many people, when they feel upset, feel guilty or blame themselves or judge themselves. Very, very common. I used to do that all the time. I used to hate feeling afraid because I was teased when I was growing up for being afraid. So being afraid is wrong and bad, and I don't want to feel it. And when I would feel it, since I hated it, I'd have fearful thoughts and immediately start adding hateful thoughts to it, and it would make it 10 times worse. So
And it's
instead
so
of
quick,
getting, what's
right?
that?
It's so quick, right? You don't even know
Very
you're
quick.
doing
Oh, yeah, very, very quick. Very, very quick. Very, very quick. So compassion. Compassion for myself was when I realized that when I would get afraid, that wasn't the problem because anybody can have a thought in an instant that creates fear. All you have to do is sneak up behind somebody and make a really loud noise, and you'll see how quickly anybody can have a fearful thought. That's normal. It's the thinking we do after that that determines what happens. So I'd have a fearful thought, and then I'd go, why am I having this? What's wrong with me? How come I keep having all these fearful thoughts? What am I going to do about it? I got to figure this out. And I wouldn't do what my granddaughter did, which was have the thought and get present, and pretty soon she's playing again. I didn't do that. I would feed it with more and more negative thinking. And if you add negative thinking to any feeling when you're upset, it's like putting gas on a fire. So when I started to realize that innocently I was thinking myself into a black hole every time I felt bad, and I thought I had to think about things to figure it out. But when I'm in a really low state, any thinking I do is going to be low state thinking. Like in AA, they call it stinking thinking.
okay.
People get caught up and a lot of negative thinking that they think the feeling created by that is somehow caused by something in their life because they haven't learned yet. Feelings are created by the power of thought. And the power of thought creates whatever thought you're thinking, and whatever thought you're thinking you're going to feel. And it's very logical, very scientific. Sad thought, sad feeling, happy thought, happy feeling. As your thinking changes, you feel different. But even if you feel horrible, if you know it's your thinking, you're no longer a victim.
Yeah.
So that's how I started having compassion for myself rather than what I was doing, which is, what's wrong with you? How come you get so frightened? Other people don't do that. And or you really, there must be something wrong with you. See, all of those thoughts were creating a feeling. Innocently, adults extend their normal low moods. Everybody has low moods, but adults think into them, and the thinking they do extends it. If you have a low mood and you immediately see that as a friendly, helpful indicator that the only problem for humans psychologically is when they're in a low mood, they get involved in that thinking and then they think it's true.
You know, as you're speaking, what's showing up for me that I'm seeing, I keep seeing it over and over again, is ultimately for me, there's this one thought that keeps coming up that generates all of the other ones that kind of go, you
Yeah,
know, and
yeah,
and I for me, the one that I'm seeing is I have to be good. I have to be a good person.
yeah,
So if if a thought shows up that tells me I'm not a good person, then all depending where I'm at in that moment, I'm either gonna, sometimes I say, no, I already am a good person. Like I don't have to worry about that. And I can drop it pretty quickly.
yeah,
But if I'm in
yeah,
a low mood, then I'm gonna go, what do you mean? I'm a bad person. I'm not a bad person. Look, I did that. And then I go into justification.
yes,
And then
I
and
know.
then it just spins out of control.
Very, very, very common until we see deeper that our reaction is a gift. Thank God I feel upset if something happens. It's letting me know that I'm holding on to negative thought, and there's only one cure. One cure. What my granddaughter does is just come back to the present moment and let it go, knowing that if it creates tension, stress, upset, it's low quality thought, so it'll be filled with negativity and judgment. There's nothing wrong with low quality thought. We eat healthy food. We say that's high quality. We eliminate waste. That's low quality. That's both normal. We all have shitty thoughts, but you don't want to mess with them. And you certainly don't want to throw them back at the other person. What do you do with shitty thoughts? You flush them. I'm sorry to be so graphic, but it's the metaphor that helped me. Literally, it was helped me the most, and it has helped many clients. It's normal to have low mood thinking. Everybody has low moods. It's the psychological waste. You have good food, you have garbage. You have good food, you have waste. It's natural cycle in nature. It's a natural cycle. So there's nothing wrong with feeling afraid or feeling angry or feeling upset. That doesn't mean we're not good people. But if you grab onto that thinking and think it's true and then act on it, that's the only problem people have psychologically. If you don't grab onto it, or if you know it's just low quality thoughts, so you don't pay attention to it, you'll become like a little kid very quickly and you'll get over your upset very quickly.
Because ultimately, in the present moment, there's never a problem. The problem only exists in our mind.
Well, that's only when we're thinking do we generate fear or stress. And when we're present, we're not holding any thought, and the energy in our being expands rather than contracts. Jasmine, in a lot of spiritual teaching, they'll say there's only two emotions, fear and love.
Mhm.
The thinking we do is the only way we can have thoughts that create fear, tension, stress, upset. When we let go of fear, fearful thoughts, we release the energy, and the nature of energy is to radiate and expand. So if you light a match, that energy will expand all the way to the next planet and beyond, right? It's the same with life energy. Its nature is to expand. When we hold on to our thinking, we suffer. If you let it go, you become resilient and you'll have low moods and you'll get over them quickly. And that's one of the absolute primary symptoms, if you will, of being healthy. You're resilient. And we're built to be resilient. It doesn't matter how long you've been holding on to negative thought, thinking it's true and acting it out. As soon as you realize the nature of it, you have a choice. So then pretty soon you'll see when you have a reaction, it's normal. It's just some low quality thought coming through. And if you let it go, you'll get over it quickly. And you have free will, so you don't have to act on it if you don't want to. That's called being mature. That's called being grounded. That's using your free will as a way of liberating your own well-being.
So,
Un-
what do you think? I'm sorry.
no, go ahead. Go
What
ahead.
do you
I
think?
can keep going forever. So it's,
So, one of the things, so something happened with my father, and I was just wondering what if you can tell me what happened there. So, something that I was withholding something from my father.
yeah,
So I wasn't telling him something, and I was obviously, it was a thought, and I was holding on to it, and I didn't tell him, and and it just been there for a long time. I mean, you know,
yeah,
I was gonna say I'm 53, but I'm not 53. I'm 55 now. Uh, so I'm 55, and I've had it for a long time. I've been thinking this for a long time. And with everything that's going on with my father now, who's 82, and he's getting close, like we know his health is not as good, and he keeps telling us, "This is my last year. I'm dying this year." It's been saying it for a while now.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and so, but we're preparing for it. But this week, I told him, I said to him, I said, "Dad, sometimes I just think you don't love me, you know." And I never
yeah,
said that to him ever. And I never wanted to tell him because in my mind, it was like I'm going to hurt him by telling him this.
yeah,
And of course, when I said it, emotions came out. And then he started crying. And he looked at me and he said, "That's not true." And I heard the truth in it. Like,
hmm,
I totally heard the truth in it. And it was kind of like that bubble of thoughts had like
yeah,
gone.
yeah,
He would call and it was so heavy. Oh no, he's calling. The phone's ringing. It's my dad. What am I? Like there was so much around it. Now he calls and I just go, "Hey, how you doing?" And it's like totally clean.
yeah,
And I love it. I'm like, this is so, it feels tiny, but it was humongous.
yes. Well, I love that story, and it's great that it played out the way it did. both on your part and his part. When we let go of fear, what's left is love.
Mhm.
And I've worked with people all over the world, all ages, and I see no exception that if the negative thoughts in a person's mind completely falls away and they're no longer thinking they're true, they're kind, loving, friendly. In other words, at core, everyone is healthy. Everyone is wise, loving, awake, friendly, kind at core. When we get caught up in our thinking, it creates this feeling that we think is done to us by other people of the world. And then we say things that out of that state of mind that are very negative. So it's a little bit like having a cold, nothing wrong with that. But then walking up to somebody and sneezing in their face and expecting to get good results.
Yeah.
And that's what happens when most of us get upset. We dump our upset on other people. My father did. Then I learned how to do that with my kids. It's innocent because we didn't understand that our feelings came from our own thinking, so we could take responsibility for feelings, which also gets us off the hook for what other people are feeling. They're feeling their thinking. Well, I don't have any control over their thinking. If they're angry, I can understand it given the thinking they have. No wonder they're angry, and they don't have a clue where their anger comes from. Because if I ask them, they would never, ever say, well, that's obvious. It's what I'm thinking. No other reason. Nothing you did made me angry. My thoughts made me angry. Right? People haven't learned that. Now we're teaching that to people all over the world.
Yeah.
But the second part of compassion, so one part is seeing it's very easy for people to get caught up in low mood thinking, be miserable, not know where it comes from. So therefore, they open their mouth and spew negativity. It's one thing, it's going to happen. I expect people in low moods, if they open their mouths, that it's going to come out negative and judgmental. I expect it. I'm not surprised when it happens. But the other part that makes it easy is that I see the biggest thing that's making it difficult for the other person is that they haven't learned that they have perfect well-being inside at all times. It just gets covered over when we're holding on to thoughts that create contraction, fear, anger, judgment. I haven't learned that. So my father was in a good mood, was a beautiful, kind, loving person. In a low mood, he could be really mean. And he would drink to try and feel better, as many people do.
Mhm.
Alcohol, drugs, money, food, sex, something to distract us from our thinking so we can temporarily feel better. It's not a cure. It really, in the long run, makes things worse. But it's all based on a misunderstanding. If people knew where their upset comes, they would immediately let go of that thinking. So they would begin to feel better because happiness is our nature. It's our nature. So the second thing is like I look at people like my father and your father now is well, they get caught up in their negative thinking, don't know it, and act on it. And they're beautiful, kind, loving, warm people inside, underneath the persona, the mask, the personality. It's like at Halloween, you put on a monster mask and you try to scare people. And behind the mask, you've got a kind, loving person, right? Once you know it's just a mask, you don't take it so seriously. Once you know your dad, underneath all of his negative thinking, genuinely feels love like anybody. And when he's not in his head, he's going to feel that. So maybe it's rare that he's not in his head, but when he's not, there's nothing about his well-being that's broken. It's always there intact. So the oldest psychological metaphor is that spiritual center that can't be damaged is like the sun. So we can get caught up in our thinking, which creates the storm clouds. We're in a thought storm. But when the clouds part, there's the blue sky of clarity and presence, the present moment. And then we start feeling better for no reason. That's the sun. But most people, when they feel better, don't know it's coming from their well-being. They'll blame their good feelings on something outside of themselves. So they'll say, the sun came out and I was so happy. And they'll blame the sun. And you say, well, the sun came out yesterday and you were miserable. Why didn't it make you happy then? Right? Or someone say, oh, I was so bummed out. And then my friend came over and they cheered me up. Well, technically, that's not true because your friend could have come over and you could have kept thinking about how miserable your life was, and nothing they would have done or said could cheer you up as long as you're thinking that way. But if your friend comes over and you drop all your negative thinking, go, hey, oh, I didn't know you were coming. Oh, this is great. Come on in. You've already let go of your negativity, and immediately the clouds part and the sun shines through. So compassion is seeing the innocence of people suffering while simultaneously know that they're a loving, beautiful person inside, no matter how much they're caught up on the outside. Then you'll feel compassion for them, guaranteed. When I saw my own well-being, I stopped being so judgmental of myself. Stopped seeing other people's well-being, then I could forgive my father and remember all the ways in which he was loving and have mercy on his poor soul. He died at 56 of a heart attack from smoking, drinking, and living in stressful thoughts chronically. He would have loved this. He would have loved learning about thought and innate health. He would have loved it. I predict it would have saved his life. He would have lived a long, healthy life.
Mm.
But he didn't learn that, so I can't blame him for something he hadn't even learned.
Yeah.
If you put a little kid in a car, you don't blame them if they can't drive the car.
I'm talking to my dad now. Now kind of like I had a conversation with him and I was like, okay, Dad, you're 82. You have to bring your mind to 82. Like you're thinking, you have to look at how you're living your life now and bring yourself with the now, with how you are now. You can't continue to live in the past. Like, for example, my father had a courier company. He had a shipping company.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
for him, it was very important to have a high efficiency gas car. Like he always bought cars because he had a fleet. So he was like, okay, how many gas per gallon? Like, like he to this day he keeps telling me, well, he has had a company for over 20 years. And he goes and he bought a hybrid car, and he's paying like it's very expensive to have a hybrid car, right?
yeah,
But he's like, it needs to be fuel efficient. I'm like, yeah, but you're not traveling like you're traveling. So we're kind of having these kind of conversations, and I could see this kind of opening, you know, coming to him. And
yeah,
I can
yeah,
see that having busted that thought makes me get back grounded into what I know of this understanding.
yeah,
And then I can talk to him from that space and not from the space of, you don't love me, I need to protect myself, you know?
yeah,
And it's just so cool. I'm like, I'm gonna be having a relationship with my father now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's wonderful you've had that breakthrough,
Yeah,
Jasmine. I'm very happy for both of you.
yeah, me too.
I
Very happy.
had a year of that with my father before he died,
Yeah,
and I felt eternally grateful.
nice. Well, Dicken, believe it or not, we've already busted our time. I'm not surprised. That I knew we were going to talk, but I'm going to tell people now that they can still subscribe to your program if they want to, right? They can.
Yes, I'm doing a 6-week online course about compassion. And we had one class already, but if you join now, I could send you the link to the first class, and and then you could attend the
Five, the rest.
next 5. Or there are a couple of people in the class that the time of the class makes it impossible for them to attend. So they just bought the program so they could watch the whole course and participate that way. So that's okay too if people can't, because it's on Tuesday, 10 to 11:30 Pacific
Okay.
time.
And people might be listening to this way after the class actually occurred. So
Yeah,
just reach out to Dicken. I mean, you can find him on Facebook. You're on Facebook, and you have a do you have a contact form on your website if anybody wants to contact
I
you?
do.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
So reach out to him. Everyone, he's very easy to talk to. You reach out to him. Like, do not hesitate. It's essentially what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for accepting and coming back again. It
Oh,
was
you're welcome, Jasmine.
a lot of
That's a great topic, and I appreciate your sharing because it's such a common problem that almost everybody has somebody in their life who's unkind. And so it's a very relevant question. Certainly has been in my life. And I was glad I learned some things that make me so much less reactive. And when I do react, it's like my granddaughter. It's no big deal. I just don't feed it with more negative thought.
I really am this year. I kind of like paused at the end of last year and I said, what am I going to do with my platform? You know, like I really like that's what I looked like.
Mm,
What am I going to talk about on my social media feeds and what am I going to talk about on my podcast? And for me, it's all about looking within. I know that we know. Like
yeah,
if somebody
yeah,
tells me you're a liar or you're this or you're that, I could react or I could just go, no. You know, like I know. So I don't have to listen to what's outside. I just keep looking inside. That's what I did with my
yeah,
father. Like my father would do something and then I go, okay, it's within, it's happening within, what's going on within. Like I was trying to fix him. He shouldn't say that to me. He shouldn't say that to me. He shouldn't act like this. He shouldn't like I was trying to fix him. So I was
yeah,
always outside myself, never
yes,
inside.
yes,
So the
yeah,
more I looked within, the more I was like, okay, I'm judging him. Oh, I don't want him to do that. Oh, and then I'm making myself wrong. Oh my God, that's such a mess. And it was just kind of at one point, it was just, okay, you're gonna cry. Who cares? Just say what you gotta say, you know?
yeah,
And it's really about looking within and see for yourself. You know, you know.
yeah.
You're gonna hear the
Yeah.
truth.
My teacher used to say, you don't have to examine the content of your thinking. You just have to realize that you are thinking and that whatever you think, you're feeling. That's all you need to know. If you have a bag of garbage and it smells, you don't have to rip it open to examine the content. As soon as you know that it's garbage and realize you're holding it, you drop it in the trash. And AA, they go, you have stinking thinking, so let go and let God. It just means let go, and you quiet down and discover that you have this well-being. Whenever you quiet down, you'll feel better. And when you feel better, you'll have all the common sense you need to deal with any problem. Like you did, your common sense says, share this with my dad. So you told him what you'd been thinking all these years, and it was helpful because it came from that place.
Yeah. It wasn't me making him wrong. It wasn't. I wasn't.
Yes, no.
I could have,
If
I could
it,
have at one point shared it coming from that space, but I
yes,
knew enough to say, no, this is not coming from that space. And
yes.
I wasn't. I was happy. I was
I
coming
can,
from
I
this.
can, I can tell, and that's why it had the impact. If you had a tone to it,
Yeah.
boy, people don't react to our words; they react to the feeling that we're in when we say the things to them. Which is why when I was upset, I'd wait until I felt better, and then I'd go talk to the person. I used to do the opposite. Get upset, keep thinking about it, become more upset, and then say, okay, I gotta talk to them.
Yeah.
And go sneeze in their face and then wonder why it never worked out.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, thank you so much.
Okay, you're
And
welcome, Jasper.
everybody, thank you everyone for listening. And I hope you've enjoyed this episode and that we'll see you in the next one. I'm going to say dream it, dare it, do it, live the life you want. See you next episode. Take care.